Welcome to the Emerging Lawyer series at the Coffee Conversation Show, powered by the Emerging India Forum TIF and a tech partner, Prime Infotech Solution. Theme is Restructuring, Litigation, and Strategy. We have with us Rishabh Chandra, Senior Associate at Associates Advocates. With a deep rooted expertise in dispute resolution, restructuring, and insolvency, Rishabh has built a strong reputation in the legal field, frequently appearing before the High Court of Bombay, NCLT, DRT, and other key judicial forums. His expertise spans high stakes commercial litigation, arbitration, and advisory roles across industries like banking, financial services, manufacturing, and infrastructure. From strategizing pre litigation measures to handling complex insolvency matters, Rishabh's legal journey is one of persistence, expertise, and impact. So, welcome, Rishabh, to today's coffee conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Virani.
Okay, so let me explain you the flow. There are three rounds: professional journey, personal journey, and a surprise rapid fire round for which you have to be witty, fun, and quick. And here's a
Surely.
gift, which will be autographed, but you have to first win it. And
Surely.
which
Looking
joke?
forward to.
Okay. So, friends, I'm Lion Amir Virani, host at Coffee Conversation and legal tech evangelist at Prime Infotech Solution, author of 15 books. We help law firms, corporate legal, startups, SMEs with world-class technology, software licensing, and tech training solutions. So, my first question for your professional journey around Rishabh.
Yeah.
What inspired you to pursue law in the first place? Was there a defining moment?
Yeah. So that's quite an interesting question. Honestly, I am an accidental lawyer. So, but once you happen to know, you will realize how life has come to a full circle in my case. Throughout my school days, I was always more and more interested in social sciences, literatures, etc., etc. And I was not that much inclined towards science, mathematics, etc. However, having said so, because my elder sister is happens to be an IITian, and there are many in the family who are in the IITs and medical fields, etc. So I decided to take a plunge into the field of science, and I was not very happy preparing for it, though I did make it to some decent colleges, but that was not my calling. So that was always the disconnect. Meanwhile, I happened to connect with a family friend of mine who is currently practicing in the Supreme Court today. He is a pass out of symbiosis and he's doing very well for himself in the Supreme Court. So while having multiple interactions with him, and thanks to him for giving me so much of time and guiding me, giving me that kind of mentorship, I started developing some interest in the field of law. And though in my family hardly anyone is a lawyer, but pursuant to my interactions with him, I decided to take a plunge and see how it works out. And once I joined my law school, I did well. Academically, also, I did well. Though I personally believe it's not the marks and grades that matter so much in this profession. But once you do well, of course, you get into the radar of the professors and all. And thereafter, I started doing a lot of co-curricular activities, etc., which of course we will discuss hopefully in the subsequent times. And this, I would say, since then there was no looking back since then. So that's how I ended up in law.
Wow, beautiful. So, let's dive deep into the conversation, Rishabh. You, you have handled cases in multiple courts and
Yeah,
tribunals across India. How do
yeah.
you adapt your approach based on different legal forums and multiple courts?
See, first of all, I would say that whether you are having a matter in the courts which are more acquainted or more known to you, like Mumbai, for example, where I am based out of, or whether you are having it in some outstation matters, the first and foremost part is that you have to be good in terms of your substantive laws. Having said so, because when it comes to procedural aspects of the law, every court differs from place to place. So the first and foremost thing to do in a, I would say, smart manner and a proactive manner is to find a good lawyer who is based out of that particular city. Like we have handled cases in Calcutta, Chennai, Delhi, Guwahati, Ahmedabad. So the first and foremost thing we do is through the help of networkings and even otherwise, we happen to find people who are not just competent AORs but also approachable AORs. Because in terms of court procedures, etc., you will need some support. That I would say is the first and foremost thing to keep in mind. Having said so, you must also learn to develop some good rapport, with those local councils or senior councils in the outstation matters. And wherever you're briefing them, one has to be confident enough to put across one's own point across the table without feeling much of hesitation, and also have a sense of what the senior counsels have to say about the local trends of that court, about how the judges' moods are. That is one aspect. Another aspect is that one can also appear by oneself. Now that we know, especially post the COVID era, that most of the courts are virtual. So there, recently I had one occurrence where the client was insisting for a senior counsel, and we did engage a senior counsel, but the learned counsel was actually occupied in the other courtroom. So the learned judge asked me to commence the arguments, so which I did. And by the time the senior counsel came to the courtroom, I would say two-thirds of the arguments were already done. So there,
Mhm.
when you have to argue yourself, you have to observe the judges, because obviously in one case, as we know, in litigation, matters keep on happening from one date to another date. It is not that all matters get concluded on one date. So whenever you are observing a judge, you have to do so very keenly, and more particularly, you have to do so when you are doing outstation matters. To give you a simple example, even depending upon which high court or which court it is, the tendency and the expectation of judges change. For example, I have done some internships in even Jharkhand High Court, Ranchi, for that matter. Unlike a Delhi or Bombay High Court, which is very, very vibrant, there the judges would sometimes expect the juniors to pretend as if they don't know everything. Now there is a very thin line of difference. It doesn't mean that the junior doesn't know anything. It also doesn't mean that the judge wants the junior to believe that he doesn't know anything. But because of, I would say, maybe a small town culture, maybe
Mhm.
some different kind of exposure from Delhi and Bombay, or that's why I think there is some expectation that when a junior is appearing before a judge, he will appear in a particular manner. So these are very deep and minute nuances which one has to understand, and that also applies equally to those matters which are not outstation matters. So I think that's why you say that knowing the judge, the art of knowing the judge, is very important, something even my college principal used to harp upon a lot. So that is one thing I keep in mind. So that's how we manage outstation matters, and we have been able to obtain favorable orders quite impressively in outstation matters.
Beautiful. So, Rishabh, what are the biggest challenges companies face when dealing with corporate restructuring and insolvency cases?
Yeah, so that's also a very interesting question. So one has to understand it from two or three different perspectives. One perspective would be from the perspective of suspended management, right? When a company goes into insolvency, what are the challenges which suspended managements have to face? The second is, what are the challenges with which the employees or workmen who are still working in the company have to face? Because their situation is also, very, very dilemmatic. On the one hand, they have to continue and come to work so as to keep that unit, keep that function, company operational, right? And at the same time, they are unfortunately not getting paid properly because hardly there is any funds in the company. And the third perspective, I would say, is from the perspective of the poor guy insolvency professional, because he also has to manage a lot of things, that in the sense that he doesn't have sufficient funds to run the company, but he has to keep everybody's interests in mind and balance everybody's interests. So having said so, from an insolvency professional's perspective, because we advise insolvency professionals quite often, even those who are being supported by teams like ENY, Grant Thornton, etc., etc. So there, one is of course scarcity of funds. Like I mentioned to you, in any insolvency company, it's obvious that there will be scarcity of funds. Having said so, despite the scarcity of fund, he has to somehow maintain that company as a going concern, because the company can't close down. If it closes down, then the insolvency resolution becomes even more difficult. Then he also faces challenges like the suspended management is not providing a lot of data, past years, financials, audit statements, etc., etc. These are the challenges that mostly the IPs face. From an employee perspective, like I mentioned, one has to keep working to keep the company going and operational. But at the same time, not only their regular salaries, even their retirement benefits like EPFO dues, gratuity dues. Now, of course, there is some change in position of law. There are judgments that EPFO and gratuity dues have to be paid in priority. But earlier situation was a bit unfortunate. And even as lawyers, we also used to feel a bit guilty, but what to do if the position of law was not correct at that point of time? And that's what the law is. It evolves with time, isn't it? And from the suspended management perspective, A lot of times the suspended management, what they don't understand is that the insolvency professional has come to resolve the company. He's not your enemy, right? It's not a debt recovery. It is for revival of the company. So if suspended management starts, thinking or taking things in the right perspective and considering it as a collaborative effort with the insolvency professional rather than any war or battle as such, I think things will become very easy. But lastly, the biggest challenge I feel is that though there have been good resolutions under insolvency laws, no doubt, but the NCLTs, the way they are functioning, they are, I think, overburdened with cases. A lot of times there are change of judges or reconstitution of benches, and sometimes a lot of applications or petitions with relation to any company, they get substantially heard. But after substantial hearing of the cases also, the judges change. So these things, I think, have to be taken into seriously, and one has to come up with some solid resolution so that the insolvency regime doesn't end up, being a failure like some of the previous regimes of debt recovery, etc.
Beautiful. So, Rishabh, when working on high stakes litigation, what strategies do you and your team prepare for complex cases?
Yeah, so that's again a very interesting question. So, first of all, I would say whether it's a complex matter or not, one has to be very, very good with three or four basic aspects of a case. One, of course, is that fact of the case you have to know by heart. And that is something even a junior or an intern can't really take an excuse because, as we say in law, there can't be much ignorance in terms of fact or law. So, fact is something everybody has to be very, very good with, and one has to have it on their fingertips, I would say. Second is that what is the applicable law? Again, you have to be very, very good in terms of your conceptual knowledge, conceptual understanding of the laws. And legal profession is such that it's a very dynamic and evolving profession. So when you say law, it is not just the static law, it is also the dynamic aspect of the law, which is either by way of recent amendments, recent notifications, or it can also be, by way of some recent case laws. If you are not aware of what are the recent judgments, even if the judgment has come, let us say, a couple of days before the hearing, the other party may cite it and you may be really unaware of it. So these are the basic aspects. Having said so, also one more aspect which everyone needs to keep in mind, especially while dealing with complex litigations or even complex transactions, is that you have to find a practical solution for the client. Of course, that doesn't mean you will not follow the law, but within the bounds of law, you have to find a practical solution. That's very important. Having said so, when you do high stake litigations, like I mentioned to you, a few occasions where the senior counsels were actually held up and the briefing advocates were asked to commence the arguments. So there you have to be, you really have to think on your feet. You have to be very sharp in your analytical skills, understanding the judges, understanding what is coming from the other counsel, anticipating what kind of questions can fall from either from the judges or from the other counsels. So these are the basic aspects, I would say. And of course, when you do a high stake matter, which we mostly do in law firms, I would say 95% of the matters are indeed high stake matters. And there is a sense of responsibility because your partners or your senior partners are really relying upon you and even giving you opportunities to argue those cases on your own or negotiate some of the corporate documents on your own. Because they have reposed that kind of trust on you, then it becomes your obligation to always bring on your A game, to always give your 200%. And of course, things like, confidence level, coordination with councils, senior councils, having good relations with those one that one needs to maintain. Those things do come with time and patience, I would say. But as long as one is willing to continuously give his 200%, I'm sure that one does end up learning and improving with due course of time.
Beautiful. So, Rishabh, how has the rise of ADR and
Yeah.
arbitration impacted commercial litigation in India?
Yeah, so again, a very interesting and welcoming question. In fact, it is a very welcoming change, I would say, that because India, of course, traditionally has been lagging behind against, countries like Singapore, Paris, US, UK, etc. Even otherwise, but more so when it comes to alternative dispute resolution. So there are certain things which, have really helped in terms of commercial litigation in India. First and foremost is that which I personally feel is very important for us as lawyers also, and sometimes for clients also, that unlike a traditional court, you don't have to wait the entire day for your matter to be called out, isn't it? If it's an arbitration, mediation, there is a fixed time slot, and more often than not, whatever proceeding has to happen will end up happening in that fixed time slot. So that is one convenience factor which has actually helped arbitrations and mediations, etc., to grow globally more and maybe a little less in India, but nonetheless, we are on the right track, I believe. Second of all, whenever the arbitrations happen, as we know, sometimes there are a panel of, let's say, three arbitrators. So one of them is always a subject domain expert. If it's an arbitration pertaining to the field of, let us say, road construction, renewable energy, pharmaceutical disputes, food safety, it can be anything. So once you have people who are actually experts of that field, they may be scientists, they may be chemists, they may be engineers, etc., etc. So so considering that it is no longer restricted to only judges, it really helps, because a judge no doubt must be a learned person, but he is not supposed to have all the knowledge of all the things, right? Isn't it? But if you have a dispute which pertains to patent, which pertains to technology, so everyone has a limitation. That is the second aspect, which is very, very important, and that's why arbitration and ADR has been a success in India, or and even otherwise across the globe. But of course, there
Wow.
are some loopholes as well. I would say till date we are still in the process of figuring out differences between seat and venue of arbitration, place of arbitration. Of course, there are a line of judgments, and of course, we are also constrained by time. I would not rather go into the details that much. But there are certain loopholes, certain lacunae, which really need to be overcome. And but lastly, I would say, all said and done, if you ask me about ADR, it has really opened up a great avenue for the lawyers, even for those who want to become arbitrators. And for the same reason, I believe even those who are market leaders in this field, they have been saying quite often nowadays that there is a need for more and more lawyers and more specialized people who can come to the field of arbitration. And if we happen to do that, only then we will be able to really catch up with other countries who are much ahead of us in terms of ADR skills. And when we talk of ADR, of course, arbitration is the most predominant that comes to our mind. But we must not forget that even mediation and conciliation are very vital and very useful ADR skills.
Yeah. So, Rishabh, with AI and legal tech evolving rapidly, do you see technology playing a bigger role in dispute resolution?
Yeah, so let me put it this way, because this question always keeps on cropping up, be it in the legal field, be it in the IT field or any field. Will AI actually end up replacing professionals? So the way I think is that, of course, AI cannot replace lawyers as such, but those lawyers who are not apt with adopting or adapting to the AI tools, of course, they will stand a chance or threat of becoming a bit obsolete. So it's very, very important to adapt to AI. And even if for that matter, if you ask me, adapting to a simple iPad, which is not an AI thing per se, but that is also very important. If you see the senior counsels in the courts in their 60s and 70s, unlike carrying the entire pile of files and all, everyone has now come up to the iPads. But coming to your question, see, when we talk about AI or tools like that, we know that technology is a useful servant, but it can't be a master. It has to be a dangerous master. So we have to keep in mind that we are using technology as a boon and not as a bane. That is why, to give you a simple example, if you ask me to type out a legal notice, I can give a command to ChatGPT. The legal notice will come up within probably 10 seconds, not even more than that. That is one approach. The other approach is to diligently do the drafting myself, because the client has, of course, trusted me to do the legal notice drafting or whatever kind of drafting. Parallelly, if you also give that command to the chat GPT, if something is missing out, you can do a reconciliation. Likewise, if you have a 200, 300 page of petitions to read, which for lawyers is not a very big deal, because lawyers are supposed to read through documents very quickly. So if you would simply give a command to the chat GPT or AI to just give you a summary of those 200 pages, and then there can be mistakes, because of course that sixth sense aspect, that human aspect is missing. So the better option is that you, of course, do your own diligence, do your own hard work. Parallelly, you can always refer to the chat GPT or AI. So I would say it is a great tool, but it cannot be replacement for your own diligence, for your own traditional, thorough style of working, which always pays off.
Wow. So, Rishabh, according to you, what skills do you think young lawyers need to succeed in insolvency and dispute resolution law?
Yeah. So, see, basically, there are three, four aspects which are very important to keep in mind. First of all, be it in the field of insolvency and dispute resolution, or be it in any field in general, even lawyering or non-lawyering, you have to have a strong calling and a genuine passion, right? It is always said that law is a jealous mistress, and this is a profession which demands a lot. So the first and foremost thing is that regardless of whichever field or specialization it is, you have to have a strong calling and genuine passion for it. Having said so, you must also have a ideal, balance in your skill sets and temperaments, because as an insolvency and disputes lawyer, you will be doing a mix of litigation work also and transactional and advisory work also. In litigation, there are occasions when you have to be more persuasive in the court. Of course, not aggressive, but persuasive. Whereas when it comes to corporate advisory or transactional kind of work, there you have to find effective solutions and quick solutions for your clients, be it insolvency professionals, be it any other clients. So that kind of adaptability and acclimatization is very important according to me. Then, of course, time management is one aspect, because when you're doing a mix of both court visits as well as transactional aspects of insolvency, let us say drafting of a resolution plan, negotiation of a resolution plans, there will be occasions when you may be receiving client calls during the hearings, but you have to manage, between two hearings or during the recess, you have to manage those things. And also, I feel it is very important for everyone to have a good understanding of financial statements, audit statements, etc. Like I gave my own example, I came from the science background, right? But over a period of time, you have to develop those skills, because when you develop both kinds of disputes and insolvency skills, then only you will be able to actually be successful in this field. Because this is a field which will be a combination of skill sets which demands or which is demanded of a litigator, as well as those skill sets which is demanded of a corporate lawyer. So it's a mix of both, but I would say it's a good challenge to have as well, because if you get to do both kinds of work, and there is hardly any monotony.
Wow. So, Rishabh, who has been the biggest influence in your personal life and your career?
Yeah. So, see, if you ask me about my personal life, of course, I would say that I have observed and learned a lot from my late father. A lot of virtues and qualities like honesty, integrity, credibility, being socially available and helpful to everyone, being humble. I think they are very important. At the same time, a lot of my school teachers, I would like to give a great credit to them, because during the primary school days, I was, I think, more of an introvert kid. And today, of course, when you reflect back into those things, it doesn't really matter if you stood 35th or 36th in a class of 60. Doesn't really matter that much. But at that point of time, it could have mattered. So there were teachers who always kept on motivating me that these things don't really matter. You have to do your own thing, your own work, and just be happy and satisfied with it. In terms of career professionally, of course, again, there are two aspects. One is that you learn a lot from those with whom you work. And the other aspect is that you observe some people and you learn from them, isn't it? So if you talk about having observing someone, I have a great admiration for Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. If you ever happen to observe and see how he argues, he always argues in a very precise manner, because we all know courts don't have so much of time, and there is so much of tendency in the courts. So if you observe him, he will always come with a maybe piece of paper. In a very systematic manner, he will jot down, these are my 5 points which I want to argue, and these are my two or three sub points in each of the 5 point. So precision is very important. Likewise, you also observe some other great lawyers you keep on dealing with. You go to engage or brief a senior counsel, sometimes opponent counsels as well. Within my own firm, of course, I have learned a great deal from two particular people I would like to name. One is, of course, our managing partner, Mr. Bhumi Daruwala. If you ever happen to interact with him, you can give him a 200-300 pager document to go through. He'll call you after 10 minutes. I have gone through. and now we can discuss. And at the same time, there is great amount of humility also. And
Mhm.
I also closely work with Miss Sandhya Iyer. So there also, first of all, Miss Iyer does almost all kinds of practice areas, be it litigation, be it merger acquisition, be it banking finance, be it insolvency. So that is the first thing to learn, that you have to diversify yourself, and that is something at Vash we are always encouraged to as much diverse work as possible. And even if not possible in a law firm structure to do each and everything, at least do a couple of practice areas, not just restrict yourself to one. And at the same time, of course, I also learn, and I've also learned from Ms. Ayo how you build a team. For example, one way to build a team may be to have a strict kind of environment all the time. But the other way is that you treat the other person, your team member, as a part of your team, as a part of your organization. If you do so, then of course he will also develop a sense of belongingness, a sense of ownership to the organization. So these are the virtues which I have learned, I think, from various people in my personal life and professional life, and I'm really thankful to.
Wow. So how's experience been using legal tech products?
That has been really great. We have been using it in our firm, and it really helps a lot because the technology, like I mentioned, it always helps you. And though it is good to have a traditional approach, a thorough approach to work, but at the same time, if you have technologies, for example, today everything is digitally available. So you need certain kind of softwares. For that matter, you also need some softwares which updates you that a case is listed, not that you will not keep a track, but in litigations, we all know sometimes cases which had gone dormant can suddenly get listed again. So those kind of intimations, they really help. And that's the whole point, that you have to use technology in the right way. In fact, I feel usage of technology, if you ask me, is one of the three or four major parameters to success in the legal field, especially in today's day and age.
Wow. And how's experience been using, we were having earlier conversation, the Nitro PDF.
Yeah, so that also helps a lot because see, earlier I was more inclined into Acrobat Reader. I believe most of us who have been using computers since the probably 2000s, 2010s, 11s, 12s, we have been more accustomed to Acrobat Reader. But Nitro really has some features which helps you a great deal. Things like a whiteout, things like adding something into a document. So those are the things, even OCR for that matter, bookmarking, they help a lot because in a court of law, if you are arguing a case, if you have 1,000 page of petition, it is obvious that you have to search things quickly. So then OCR really comes handy. You can just type those words, isn't it? Likewise, bookmarking is very important. Again, to skim through, to wade through that 1,000 pager petition, if you have all your exhibits, all your documents bookmarked. So that way you will end up saving the court's time also. And these are also some basic things which leaves a lasting impression on the judge, because the judge, of course, is supposed to deal with probably 100 cases or 70, 80 cases a day. So if you are really saving everyone's time, those are also things which do matter in a court of law, even otherwise.
Wow, beautiful. So let's go to the next round and understand Rishabh as a person. Tell us about your family and your formative years.
Yeah, so I was born in a town called Darbhanga in North Bihar. My grandfather, my late grandfather, was a retired professor in the Mithila University, North Bihar, and he had settled there. So naturally, my father and all my aunt and uncle, they all had their education from there. Even today, one aunt of mine, one uncle of mine, both of them are doctors in Darbhanga. But we shifted to Patna. I think I was hardly probably 1.5 years of age. Way back in 1996, our family shifted to Patna. And the idea was to probably give a good education to me and my elder sister. And the school that I attended, I can proudly say that some of the common alumni that I share are, to name a few, are Mr. Salman Khurshid, Mr. Mohit Saraf, retired Justice Naveen Sinha. Even in other fields of law, you can name other people, right? Actor Shekhar Suman, cricketer Sabah Karim, Mr. JP Nadda, Manisha Koirala, many, many more. So, of course, a good education does make a great difference to you. So, that was one aspect of it. And at the same time, of course, my mother is a homemaker by choice. She is well qualified academically, but she chose to be a homemaker just to take care of me and my sister and ensure a good upbringing to us. My sister was, of course, the more studious one in her school days, always standing first or second in the class. Ended up making to the IITs. So far as I was concerned, I was okay in studies, not bad, not very, very great. But I was more focused into co-curricular activities as well, or even extracurricular activities. For that matter, I used to go to a proper cricket academy 3 days a week. I was a part of the music choir, the singings and instruments and all. So I had varied interests. I also had great interest in reading fictions, the prose, which I hope I should be able to carry on even today. Not that I don't find the time, the work life balance is very great, but probably we have all switched to YouTubes and documentaries. Reading is something which has taken a backseat, unfortunately.
Wow. So let's go to your college days, Bharti Vidyapeeth.
Yeah.
What are your experience memories over there
Yeah,
from there?
so I really have great and lasting memories of Bharati Vidyapit. Like I mentioned, even in my first semester, I happened to get decent grades and get amongst the rank holders. Not that it was ever my target, and not that I would even suggest someone to focus only on bookish knowledge. But that helped, that all, of course, gives you a certain kind of limelight before your professors. But after the third year onwards, I realized that I should do more of co-curricular activities. So I started doing some of the moot courts, including some of the international moot court competitions. And there I must compliment our late principal, Dr. Mukund Sarda. He was very, very helpful, very, very resourceful. And even in those instances, suppose if there was a great professor, an India fame or world fame professor of law, not in our college, but in Pune University. So he was very, very approachable and helpful to refer us to those professors. He was not very hesitant as such. Why should I give a call for such a small thing? Because he always wanted to ensure that the student should do well. And proudly today, some of my colleagues, some of my batchmates, some of them are principal associates in Cyril Amarchand, Samvad Partners, other firms. Many of them are judicial magistrates, judges. Almost everyone is doing great. Some of them are assistant professors in Jindal Global Law School. So the college was really, really great, and it was a very collaborative and cooperative environment. And it also helps if you have symbiosis, ILS, DAS, and other colleges in Pune. That's why I think Pune, some people call it as the Harvard of the East.
Yes. I've what you said, coffee connoisseur. Many are from ILS College, Pune.
Yeah. Even
Mm.
in our Vaish Associates, many are from ILS College, Pune.
Wow. Okay. So, how does the weekend look for Rishabh?
Yeah. So, over see the weekend, you have to not in a hard and fast manner as such, but you have to bifurcate it into three aspects, I would say. One aspect is that you have to devote certain time to your professional work because as lawyers, we have to read a lot. And that is what I think sets apart a qualitative lawyer over a quantitative lawyer, isn't it? So, and also you have to do a lot of heavy drafting when you work on litigations or even non-litigations. So I think weekends are more calm for heavy draftings because unlike the weekdays, you won't be getting a lot of calls and messages to revert to everyone. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect, of course, is that all of us have certain personal obligations and personal responsibilities to take care of, which we all do, preferably more so over the weekend. And lastly, when it comes to, things like family merrymaking, giving time to the family, that is very, very important. I would say I'm not someone who is very, very adventurous, or I'm not someone who may go out to a mall or a theater each and every weekend. Probably I might go out once a month, but you should give more time to your family. Just simply, having a sipping a cup of tea or a cup of coffee together. In today's hectic day and hectic age, even that has become, I think, a rarity, isn't it? And then I pursue some of my hobbies, like I watch a lot of documentaries over YouTube. I have varied interests, military warfares, and how is life in other parts of the world. Those are the things I explore. Some of my friends say that's a bit boring to know, but that's what it is. And the one thing I would definitely like to inculcate or continue from where I left in my school days was reading fictions and novels, because that really adds to your growth and perspective as an individual.
So, which fiction, if you're given a time, which fiction book would you like to read and why?
So my answer may be a bit peculiar because rather than picking up a new fiction, or maybe it's my nature that I would like to read some of them which I have read much ages before. And one of them, of course, would be Robinson Crusoe, which is a novel based on a person who was left on a stranded island and he had to spend quite a few years there. So, what was his struggle over there? That is one I would definitely like to read. The other one is a story, actually, a prose written by, in fact, a Nobel Prize winner in the field of literature, which is called as The Enemy. And that also really intrigues me because the basic notion or underlying emotion under the story was that there was a Japanese person who went to the USA to pursue his medicine courses. And probably during the time of World Wars and all, there was some disconnect between the US and Japan. So he was not treated very nicely by his landlady and other people in the US, and thereafter, he came back to Japan. He became a doctor. And then World War started. Suddenly, he used to live by the, I think, the seashore or something. Suddenly, a soldier, an American soldier, he found near his house. He treated that soldier. He performed his medical duties. And he made sure that after the soldier gets recovered, hiding him from the Japanese soldiers, he sets him free. And when he came back after setting that soldier free, he just came back wondering as to why did I do so when I myself was not treated that well during my days in the America. So literature is something I have always found interesting because even my father was a professor of English literature and he used to
Mm.
tell us a lot of things about even Bible for that matter was a part of coursework for the PG students, the MA students. So those are the things I really look forward to maybe again reading up. And had it not been the law, I really feel that, or probably I would put it that way, law may be my second most favorite profession, but probably the most favorite could have been English literature, something to do with the field of literature.
Wow. So let's go to your days at Patna, Bihar.
Yeah.
Uh, which places to visit and what food to have for viewers if they want to visit Patna?
Surely. So first of all, many people really don't know, and probably they are very indifferent to the fact that Bihar has a very ancient and rich history. And probably that positive aspect, got hidden behind the fact that a lot of negative things happened in the 1990s and early 2000s, etc. Patna has a lot of interesting things. Even in the main city, Patna, you have places like, I would say, there's a place called Kumbhrar or even some other places in Patna, where you will find the remains of the Ashoka and modern empire. If you go probably 20-25 kilometers away from Patna, you will find a place called Vaishali, which was the first ever republic in the history of the world. Then probably 60-70 kilometers in the range of Patna, you will have Bodh Gaya, you will have Nalanda. Probably 5-6 hours away from Patna, you will have Madhubani. At one point of time after Kashi, Madhubani used to be the second most famous and well-known place for scholars and scholarly studies. So there are a lot of places in Bihar. Some of them I have explored, Bodh Gaya, Nalanda, but some of them even I couldn't explore that much, frankly, because of the school days and limited vacations. But I look forward to visiting those places whenever I get a chance to go back to my place. And as regards to other question, the food is broadly a North Indian food. But if you ask me about specialities and all, of course, there are some certain things like a litti chokha, which is very famous of there. Then there is something called as khaja, and those are
Mhm.
the more famous things. But broadly, the food is akin to a North Indian food, something different from what we get here and what we miss of there.
Wow. So my last question is a googly one. Describe Rishabh in one line.
Yeah, again, a very interesting question. See, I would say that, of course, how I would like others to remember me, a good lawyer, but a better person. The other thing I would say is somebody who treated others very nicely and very well, regardless of anybody's socio-economical status and all. And last but not the least, I don't know if it sounds peculiar, but it is said that sometimes the journey is more beautiful than the destination itself. So if you ask me how would people or how would I like people to remember me, rather than someone who really conquered or someone who really succeeded, I would like people to remember me as someone who really tried his level best, who really tried.
Wow. So let's go and have some fun. The rapid fire round.
Sure.
Your go-to comfort food.
I would say it has to be paneer chili, and I also
Wow.
cook that at home sometimes when I
Wow.
get the time.
Wow. Interesting. Bombay High Court or NCLT?
For me, NCLT is a more frequent place to visit. Bombay High Court, of course, has its own aura.
A legal principle you swear by.
Please come again.
A legal principle you swear by.
That is that you can't ever have ignorance of law. That is not excusable.
Wow. The most exciting part of being a litigator.
The thrills of the court. Every day is different, and each and every day is a new experience and a learning experience. And even after having argued well to your own satisfaction level, in those hearings also, you can think of 5 or 6 things which you could have done even better.
Wow. Your favorite color?
Not that I'm very peculiar about it. Frankly, it could be probably something like blue or red, but I'm not very choosy or fussy on
Wow.
that.
Best piece of advice received.
I would say the best piece of advice received is that listen to all the advice, but 99% of it may not be good. Follow that one advice, because that one advice, had I not followed to pursue law, probably I would not be here today.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, Tea or coffee in courtrooms?
Please come again. Yeah, tea or coffee. So I would say my favorite is coffee nowadays.
Let's raise.
Yeah, that's why we are having the coffee
Cup.
conversation.
Raise a cup.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
cup is
Mine
there.
is mine is
Yeah, let's raise a toast.
surely.
And you did well. And here's your book, which will be
Thank you
autographed and
so
sent to
much.
you. So, friends, it was a lovely conversation having with Rishabh Chandra, who found his calling from science to law, and he has progressed, and he's a senior associate. So, all those young legal professionals out there, uh, focus on your calling and give your energies out there. And if you want to be in insolvency, dispute resolution, arbitration, this is the episode where Rishabh will share his journey being in the field and how seniors have helped him. And coming from Bihar, he has well settled down in Mumbai. And if you want to have paneer chili, his details are there. Connect with him, and he will invite you to have paneer chili. So this is what our coffee speakers bring to the table, being practicing as well as having their own creative sides. His creative side is fiction reading and many more things. So subscribe to the Coffee Corner Show, where there are 400 plus episodes with interesting coffee speakers. And if it will be featured like Rishabh, visit our LinkedIn page, the Emerging India Forum, our website. Our team will invite you to have coffee conversation. So take care. Thank you and happy
Thank you so much
Easter
for having
and
me. It was
enjoy
a
your
great
weekend.
pleasure. You too. Thank you.